Welcome to Zoom Into a Career. This is a series of interviews with business professionals to give kids an opportunity to find out about a career and what they can do to prepare for one. So with us today, we have Seth Thompson, and I'll let him do a little bigger introduction of what he does, but he's a training director with the trades. And so we'll learn a lot about the pipe trades in just a little bit. Just to remind everybody, this is recorded and will be on our website for future viewing. Welcome, Seth.
Thanks, Terry. I'm glad to have me on, and we've talked a little bit about this, so now we finally got to do it.
Yeah. Well, I know you've been very supportive of our programs here at the high school and really want to help students prepare for the pipe trades. And so can you tell us a little bit about your job and what you do?
Sure. So my technical title is the training director for Greater Western Washington Pipe Trades, Southwest region. We cover all of Western Washington, basically besides King County and part of the peninsula. And my job basically is I'm the principal of the school, so to speak. I wear multiple hats. It's not just, being the principal. I have to keep two facilities running and keep the bills paid and the lights on, and then we're developing curriculum and, I guess growing instructors and training instructors. And then, I'm also dealing with all the job site type things going on as well with all of our apprentices. And in the Southwest region right now, we have over 100 apprentices going. But overall, we have over 250 apprentices.
Wow. Okay, so I'm going to dig down a little bit and I'm going to say, can you explain, because we may have students who don't know what an apprentice is, they don't know what the trade is. Can you describe a little bit about the pipe trades, what that profession looks like, and then what's the way in which you get into the trades?
Sure. So the trades in general are very multifaceted. You could say, oh, I'm a commercial plumber or I'm a pipe fitter, but there's so many different things within that that you can specialize in. So our three main trades that we have are your plumber, your steam fitter, or HVACR, which is HVAC refrigeration. And within those trades, though, there's multiple different avenues you can go, and you can work your way into whatever sort of specialized field that you want. Some people get into more of like the CAD detailing bidding side of things. Other people get into more of the project management. Some people just stay a journeyman their whole career. And the process is pretty long. It can actually take a little bit of a waiting time, a licensed trade. So we have a lot of people applying to get into the program. And we honestly want it that way. I want the highest, most qualified people to be getting into the apprenticeship program. We invest a lot of money in our apprenticeship, into our apprentices. And so therefore, I want to make sure I have the most qualified people. So how you apply, we're actually working on this right now as we speak because of everything. But for the longest time, we've only been pickup application only in person. So we're working on getting that to where we can do it online. But for right now, it still is pickup in person. Typically, not, during a pandemic, we would be open basically 5 days a week, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., closed noon to 1, and open every day. And you can come and pick up an application every, one of those Monday through Friday times. So, and we do that all year. So typically what we say is we're open for application all year. Right now, we're not able to because we're able to have our business open. But so basically how it works, you come in, you pick up an application, you have 30 days from that point to return it with the necessary paperwork. And then after you do that, we schedule you for what we call an e-skill test. It's just a basic sort of understanding of math and a little bit of the trades. But when I said, I'm talking about like tape measure type reading, a little bit of geometry, no real trig, but just a lot of adding, subtracting fractions. And that test does not disqualify you. You could get a 0% and you're still going into interview. Just kind of gives us a gauge on where you're at. So also, I want to make sure to explain that in the application process, the requirements are high school diploma or GED, 18 years old, and a driver's license, preferably Washington State. There's no out-of-pocket costs. We've been able to remove all those. When I first started, we had quite a few different costs. There was a drug test, and you had to pay for an acuplacer test at local college. We've gotten rid of all those sort of things. Try to make it as easy as possible to apply and get into an interview. So after you return the application, you get scheduled for your e-skill test. After you complete your e-skill test, now you have all your necessary things taken care of. We get you scheduled for interviews. We interview twice a year, January and July. And this year we're going to have to move July interviews just because of what's going on. But that's pretty much the basis behind what we do. Open for application year round, interview twice a year. I want to keep that list of applicants. I want to keep it fresh, and I want people, excited and trying to get into the program. So when you come into interview, it's a quick interview. People aren't really prepared usually. So a lot of times I tell everybody, you should probably reapply and re-interview right away. That's part of the reason why we got rid of a lot of the cost, is so that they can do that. And what I mean by that is, you have a panel of 4 or 5 people that are going to be interviewing you. You have 15 minutes and that's it. And that's hard to get, make the impression, come off the right way, or just be prepared, because most people come in, they're really nervous. They sit down in front of a group of 4 or 5 grown individuals and they get scared and they clam up. So that second or third interview, really, they do a lot. We see a lot better scores. So after you interview, the scoring system is based on a 0 to 80 scale, and each individual interview panelist scores that person, or scores that interview. And then the average score is what places you on a waiting list to get into the program. So like I said at the beginning, it's a long, kind of drawn out process, but we're trying to make sure we have the best qualified individuals getting into the program. Whether you have no experience or you have experience, we're trying to make sure we get the best people. So that waiting list is really the key. You got to get on that waiting list to get into the program. Right now, just in the Southwest region, if I totaled up all 3 trades, we're about 215 people on the waiting list, about 80 in plumber, 60 or so in fitter, and just in the HVAC. So there is a lot of people waiting to get in, and they're constantly trying to reapply, re-interview, get a better score. And that's the key, is to get on that list, because how apprenticeship, kind of the philosophy behind apprenticeship is, it starts with a job. And so we don't start you in the apprenticeship program without a job first. So what that means is, all of our apprentices need to be, current apprentices need to be working. And when they are working, and then one of our contractors calls and says, I need 2 apprentices, and we don't have any available, we start 2 new apprentices. So we start everything based on need. We don't say, okay, we're going to bring in 20 new apprentices every single year. We've thought about doing that, but we want to stick to that mantra of apprenticeship starts with a job. And so that's how it works. So being at the top of that applicant waiting list is key. And so that's why reapplying, re-interviewing helps a lot. You stay on that list for 2 years from the date of the interview, and we keep the highest score within that 2-year period. So that there's no harm in trying to reapply and re-interview. Some people, it takes up to 3-4 years to get into the program if they're diligent and they keep trying. Other people, sometimes, if they had a good score, they can get in within 6 months or less. It just really depends. So that's kind of the quick synopsis of the application process and getting into being an apprentice.
So the apprentice is, like you said, you have a job, so you're earning money. And then once you've been accepted off that list, and I'm going to go back to the list in a second, but I just want to kind of make that connection. So you're earning while you're learning. And so what's the learning part of the apprenticeship when you get in?
Sure. So yeah, we start you off with a job right away. Our school year goes September through May, similar to a normal school year. It's 2 night classes a week. They're typically a Monday and Wednesday night. Sometimes we'd have to do Saturday classes. Sometimes it gets moved around a little bit, but 2 nights a week, 3-hour classes. It's similar to like working during the day and going to a tech school at night. That's how I would refer to it. But being a state approved apprenticeship program has its own hurdles to jump through and certain requirements that we have to maintain. And so we want to make sure that the bar is set extremely high and that we stay to that bar. So what that means is you're getting trained both on the job and in the classroom. The classroom training is what we call RSI, or related supplemental instruction. And you're required to have 1,080 total classroom hours in your 5-year apprenticeship, or 216 per year. And then you're also getting 2,000 hours on the job per year. So a 10,000 hour apprenticeship. So it's a 5-year apprenticeship. I didn't do a job of explaining that, but 5 years, 10,000 hours on the job, over 1,000 classroom hours. And so you're working on the job, you're making money, and you're learning the trade on the job. But then you're going to class at night, 2 nights a week, and you're getting that supplemental instruction. It's not the main instruction, but it's the supplemental side, meaning now we actually have the time to sit down and explain to you why you're doing what you're doing on the job. So that's the backbone behind apprenticeship, is getting both training on the job and in the classroom. And all of our contractors that apprentices work for, apprentices don't actually work for the apprenticeship program. They work for our contractors that are signed with us. I like to relate it to like the NFL Association and the NFL owners, right? So the NFL players play for the owners, but they have a union that they're made up of called the Players Association. So it's something similar to that. We have our group that we represent, but we don't employ anyone. Our contractors do. So the contractors know that they have to stick to certain requirements. They have to provide correct training. They have to vary the training. They can't put you in one shop doing one thing your whole entire apprenticeship. If they do and I catch wind of it, then I'm pulling them out, and I have the authority to do so, and I can put them on a different job or a different contractor if I have to. So that's a quick little on that.
So they're getting a lot of experience on the training of whether it's steam fitters, so whatever it takes, they're going to understand the entire industry, how to work in that field, and work in different kinds of environments, like different kinds of buildings, different kinds of facilities, and so that they can then eventually become a journeyman, which then will have apprentices and become part of that training program.
Correct.
Okay, so I want to go back just a little bit, because we're having students start to prepare and think about what they do now to get ready for a job like that, and how do they enter that field. So hearing that there's 200 and some people on a list, somebody might go, well, I'm not going for that. You said persistence is kind of important, being able
Absolutely.
to do that. And if you re-interview over and over again, you get to move up the list, that if you get better. What are those things that you're looking for? What are the things that students should be doing now to improve their ability to interview or show their application that they're ready for this type of a job?
Absolutely. So a lot of the interview, has to do with kind of your personality traits. Do you work well together with other people? I guess the interview panel is trying to identify grit and persistence, and can this person work hard in conditions that aren't necessarily the best. Sometimes we'll be out working in rain, snow, or it's 90 degrees. Obviously it's Washington, it doesn't happen that often, but still you're going to be working in all sorts of conditions, or you're going to be working in a paper mill where it's extremely hot, or you're going to be working around caustic materials. And so you have to have a little bit of that backbone. And so they're trying to identify that personality side. But the things that you can improve on besides, how to prepare for an interview and things like that, are the education and experience part. And so that's where high school students always seem to have a tough time, because they don't have that experience in any sort of a trade, really. We have some pretty amazing people that come in and apply that have bachelor's or higher degrees in other fields, and then they've realized that I couldn't find a job in the field of my degree. So now I'm coming to you and I want to do this and start all over again. So our average age of an apprentice is actually 30 years old. Most of them start around 26, 27, because they've experienced a little bit of life and they've experienced some job, have a degree, and they've realized that, well, this is what I really want to do. This is the career that I want to pursue. So that's what high school students are up against. And so to prepare for that is definitely a daunting task. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I've never been that way. You know me pretty well. I'm going to tell it how it is. And so in order to prepare, the best way is to try to go get a little bit of experience. Or if this is really what you want to do, you've researched it and you said, I want to become a commercial plumber, then what you should do is we partner with all the local tech schools, whether it's Bates, Clover Park, SPSCC, all the way down to Clark College. And I partner with all of them, and I advise them on classes that they're teaching, actually. And so we have a very good partnership there, where a high school student, either during high school or after, can go and start taking welding classes, or sheet metal, which is like HVAC type classes, electrical type classes. They have maintenance classes. Start getting some of that experience and see if this is really what you want to do. Because like I said, we invest a lot of money in apprentices. So we want to make sure that we're making as few mistakes as possible. The other options are to go get a job at, say, a supply house, whether it's a Rosen or a Ferguson, Keller. There are all these different plumbing supply shops. Even if it's Home Depot, there's Platt Electric. There's so many different shops. Get that after school job, get that summer job, try to get a little bit of experience, learn a little bit about the trade. Anything that you can do, what I call aligning yourself with the trade, helps. So all those sorts of experiences help. And yes, persistence pays off. That's the key. And school students have that disadvantage where they don't have that experience versus someone else. So the way the scoring system works, there's that 20-point section of education and experience, and a lot of high school students are more in like the 5 to 10 range instead of the 15 to 20 range. So
they can improve themselves by going and getting training. That's how they improve their score on their application side.
Yep.
Through work experience, or it could be certificates that they've earned, or through college credits that they've earned.
Correct. And a lot of plumbing outfits, or not so much the steam fitter outfits. I'm gonna just specifically talk about plumbing, but a lot of the plumbing companies or outfits, as I just said, whether they're union or non-union, the union typically partners with the apprenticeship program. So we're a state approved apprenticeship program. That's a pretty big deal, and there's a lot of hoops to jump through. But a lot of the non-union plumbing companies, they have trainees. They don't do the full-on apprenticeship, but we know those contractors, and they're a lot of really good people. And so we tell people, if you want to do this career, why not go and start with one of those companies for a little bit, see this is really what you want to do, and get a little bit of experience. And then that helps your resume get into the apprenticeship program too. Because as much as we would like to take in more people, we are a supply and demand type of industry with our contractors and with the economy and work and everything.
Right. So how did you get into this? What was your pathway into this? And then obviously you can't be a training director about something you don't know. So then you moved up into training director. So what was your pathway?
Yeah, that's good. I don't think I've ever explained this to you before. So as I went up through school, I did really well in school, very good GPA and all that sort of thing. My dad actually owned a non-union plumbing shop, and he did that from about, at least 10 years. So most of my childhood, he was owning a plumbing outfit. And he always said, you're the college kid, you're going to take this company over for me. And I just said, I don't want to be a plumber. This isn't what I want to do. I don't know what I want to do, but I don't want to be a plumber is basically what I said. And so I actually, my first college I applied to was Arizona State, and they offered me an academic scholarship. And so I said, okay, I'm out of here. I'm going there for engineering. Math was kind of my forte, I guess you could say. So I went down there and I went for 1 year, and I realized that the scholarship they offered me didn't compensate for the out-of-state tuition, to where if I just had stayed in state, or if I stayed in state and didn't go to school for a year, then I would get in-state tuition. It was actually more beneficial than doing out of state with the scholarship. So I, like many people, took a year off and then never went back to college, right? And actually I had good grades. I was on the dean's list and everything. I had good grades, but I started working and kind of took a roundabout way. I moved up to Colorado. I don't know if we've ever talked about this either, but I wrestled quite a bit all the way through nationals and Team Washington and all that stuff. So I went to Colorado Springs because I had friends there, and I thought, well, maybe I'll get back into trying to go after the Olympics. So I was in Colorado Springs working, and my dad at the time, in the meantime, he had sold his plumbing company and he had joined the union, and he was working in the union. And so he said, it's a really good time to join the apprenticeship. You should move back. And I kept saying no. And then I finally, just one day, I was kind of fed up and I was like, all right, I'm moving back and I'm joining. So I applied, and I scored really well. I went out as a helper, which I forgot to mention that. So we'll go over that. And so I started as a helper, and then I got in to a full apprenticeship and went through the 5-year program, commercial plumber program, and started teaching basically right after I became a journeyman. And it wasn't until a few years after teaching that they offered me the training director position. And I had originally said no, I was happy working out in the field doing my job. But I thought, you know what, I can make a change, and I just went through the apprenticeship program, and I've taught, and I kind of know what's going on out in the field. So I think I could really take this in a direction I think the apprenticeship needs to go. And so after a weekend of thinking on it, I called him back and said, yeah, I'll do it. So that was 3 years ago.
And so we'll go back to the helper question in a second.
Yeah.
But so as the training director, you're very knowledgeable about the entire industry that you work in. What is your kind of day-to-day work in recruiting people into this trade?
Oh, so that's just one little facet of my job, is the recruiting side. And in fact, it's, I don't even know how much time I necessarily spend on it, but my job from day to day, it really is just to put out fires, so to speak. I really just have to take what the day gives me, and I'm always problem solving. That's basically my job, is to figure out solutions. Sometimes worse, some days are worse than others, but yeah, it's just kind of managing people, right? You know, we have 30 plus instructors in the Southwest region, and I have over 100 apprentices, and each one has their own personal thing going on, and a lot of them come in and sit in my office and talk to me about it. So I'm kind of like a counselor also, you know, and I don't know, there's so many different parts to it, but it's really fun. It's stressful at times. It's a totally different type of stress than working out in the field. Working with your hands, there's something really enjoyable about it that you just can, after you're done, there's that intrinsic view of, hey, I did this, and you're looking at it and you're like, this is really cool. And then you get to be where you start taking your family by your job sites. You're like, look, I worked on that job and I did this, and I do that every time I worked on Great Wolf Lodge. Every time we go past, I'm like, I was there from start to finish. So it's there, you know, working with your hands is really, really cool. But in my position now, it's just a different type of stress. It's managing people, and it's the relationship side. So back to your kind of recruiting question is, we have multiple different ways, and we're always trying to figure out new ways to recruit more qualified, better people. And especially, how do we reach, to go back to our history of our trade a little bit, it's kind of like a family sort of a trade, to where there's multiple generations. It's like, my father was a plumber, his father was a plumber, type of thing. And I'm not just talking about my situation, which is kind of like that, but multiple generations of families have worked in the trades, and they know how valuable the career is, how much we've worked for to have the things that most people take for granted now, like an 8-hour workday and breaks and lunches and safety, you know, all those sorts of things, pensions, retirement. Those things weren't available 100 years ago. So people that are in the trade know about it, and they have multiple generations that go through it. But how do I reach the people that don't know about it, especially minorities and women? Because most women think that I'm not going to get in the trades, that plumbing or pipe fitting, working on job sites, that's not really for me. And really, women do very well in our trade, but they don't really know that. And so how do I reach those types of people? So my recruiting aspect is, I'm more or less trying to figure out, how do we reach those people that don't know about the trade? And so that's why, I'm happy doing this and many other things that you and I have worked on, because I really want to make sure that people understand what are apprenticeships, what are unions, how do they work, especially trade unions. They're quite a bit different than public sector unions. So how does that all work, and why is it beneficial, and why is this an actual career? I actually have a statistic for you that 90% of apprentices that turn out as journeymen, 90% of those journeymen retire in that same industry. So we're talking about a career. We're not talking about just a job, right? So anyways.
So I'm going to I want to go back into a couple of things that you said there, but talking it from the helper piece. So you didn't mention it before, but where does the helper piece start?
So, and it's something that I'm working with our contractors on to hire more helpers, because it's our way of sort of like test driving the car. You know, you get to see whether this person shows up to work on time, has a good attitude, works hard. Those are basically the three main things that we're looking for. But in order to go out as a helper, you have to have applied, interviewed, and be on the waiting list. And then so when a contractor says, hey, I need a helper, then we call down that same applicant waiting list that we would for apprentices, but instead we offer them a helper position. This is really beneficial to those, especially those that don't have any experience. So a lot of the people that are like, no, I'm going to wait for the apprenticeship position, they pass on it. But then you get to that one person that doesn't have a lot of experience and needs to get their feet wet. A helper is a perfect spot for them. A little bit less than what a starting apprentice makes, but you still have your full health, dental, vision. You have a decent little wage to go with it. And by that, I mean, I think it's $18.50 an hour plus $2 an hour vacation, something like that. I'd have to look at my numbers. It changes all the time, but that plus full health, dental, vision, it's not a bad wage. And it really, what it does is it propels you into the apprenticeship. If you're a good helper, you're going to get into the apprenticeship program. So I started as a helper. I was a helper for 6 months before I got in, and definitely very valuable. You learn a lot.
So it's more than minimum, and
it's more what?
It's more than minimum wage.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. And so it's all within that process. You start there, you're getting benefits as a helper, gaining that experience. And then when you do get accepted into the apprenticeship program, what is so we said you earn while you learn. What do you earn and what do you pay for that learning part? Because most of us understand in school that you're going to pay for credits, you're going to pay for college. How does that look in an apprenticeship?
So apprentices really don't pay a lot out of pocket. The only thing that we really require apprentices to pay for is their books. And even then we've started to change that sort of system. It used to be you had to buy your books every single year, and they're expensive books. You could see up to $200 or $300 worth of books per year. We've changed that to more of a library checkout system. If you damage or write in a book and when you go to return it, then you're going to pay for it. So even the book cost has reduced dramatically. So basically you're not paying much. It's really book cost, or maybe, if you are getting into welding and then we don't provide you like the hoods and the leathers and the gear required for that. So, you're going to be spending a few $100s on a welding hood and a leather jacket or whatever type of gear that you want to wear while welding. But other than that, there's really no out-of-pocket costs. It costs us about $16,000 a year to train an apprentice. So that's where we sink a lot of our costs into is training the apprentices. So you can think about getting into an apprenticeship program much like getting a $16,000 a year scholarship. And if you multiply that out over 5 years, you're talking about an $80,000 scholarship you just got. And so that's why we take it so seriously about getting how we go through the process to get apprentices in. And in that first year, you're in a probation period where you can be removed from the program for any sort of disciplinary reason. So we kind of have that clause in there, and that's not even our clause. That's Washington State has that in, so that if you did make a mistake and this apprentice is not working out, you can remove them from the program, and there's no real in the matter other than, this is the reason why we did it. So after that first year, you become a full apprentice with appeal rights and everything. So if you were to get into disciplinary trouble for whatever, not showing up to job, failing a drug test, whatever the case is, then you would actually have appeal rights and that sort of thing. It's Washington State for apprenticeships is very regulated. There's so much paperwork and so many different things that we do, but it's good because, like I said, it keeps that bar really high.
Okay. So what does an apprentice, how many hours a week do they work and what do they make?
Well, typically an apprentice works 40 hours a week. All the different trades have sort of different ebbs and flows. An HVAC, refrigeration type, HVAC tech is what we call them. They do more like service type, commercial service type calls. So meaning commercial as in like a grocery store, when one of their refrigerators breaks down, an HVAC tech will go in and service that. So in the service world, you have more of that steady 40-hour a week income. And sometimes even, more than that because, a Safeway can't shut down sometimes in the middle of the day or whatever. So if they want to replace a refrigerator, then they're going to have to do it at night. But those jobs, you're typically getting your 40 hours a week. The commercial plumbing side is new construction. So it has that ups and downs that come with new construction, but it is, it's your 5/8 or 4/10s, your 40 hours a week. 7 to 3:30 type schedule with a 30-minute lunch in between. The steam fitter world is very much big work and then shut down. So if you think about industrial, meaning like refineries or paper mills, those plants are running 24/7. And so for them to shut down is a big deal. They're losing money for every second they're shut down. So they're going to do what they call a shutdown for a 1 week period or 2 month period or whatever it is. And they're completely shut down, and you're working. There's people on the job site 24 hours, per day while it's shut down. So those jobs, they will be split up into like night shift and day shift, things like that. You'll have all the prep time, the work prior to leading up to the shutdown. So those jobs are peak, lots of hours, lots of money, and then downtime. It's not always the case, but those are definitely more that type of job. So
maybe over the year, like on average, what would an apprentice make?
Most apprentices work about 1,500 to 2,000 hours a year, and our starting apprenticeship wage, I'm quoting it off the top of my head, but it's about $28 an hour plus full benefits, and that includes 2 defined pensions, your full health, dental, vision. After your first year, you start getting into your supplemental pension, which is a 401k essentially. So you have basically 3 pensions. And the total package for a new apprentice, I want to say, is $44 an hour, but I have the wage sheet. We renegotiate our contracts all the time, so our wages are constantly changing every 6 months. So once I figure it out and I have it memorized, then it changes again, and I got to remember. But yeah, so I mean, it's a really good starting wage, and then every 6 months you work, you're getting a pay increase of 1%. So you start as a 50% apprentice, meaning you make 50% of what a journeyman does, and then you get a pay raise of 5% every 6 months up until you hit 90% in your 5th year. And then once you become a journeyman, you're making journeyman scale.
And so journeyman scale right now is then 56?
55, yeah, something like that, almost 56 an hour plus full benefits. I think total package is almost $80 an hour is what a journeyman plumber makes, or steam fitter. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So we're getting close to the end of our time. So if there is, you kind of mentioned some of this, but what are some things that kids can start doing now? You kind of mentioned a job, and you kind of talked about, classes after high school, but what can they do now to start really finding out if a trade, in your case, the 3 that you've talked about, but what can they start doing now to build those skills and find out if this is something that's for them?
Boy, that's a good question, because everybody's a little bit different. You have to be willing to work outside. You have to be willing to work with your hands. And so any sort of a preparation type job where you can go experience a little bit of that and see if you really like that. Or even, obviously it's hard to do right now, but if you can take those sorts of classes in your school, then that is beneficial as well. But the other preparing side is like your resume building, your interview, preparation. So some people do mock interviews, and you just need to prepare for that. And that's really hard to do without going and doing an actual interview. So I don't really know how to answer that from the preparation side of a resume and doing a mock interview. But at least knowing, I think for me, it's always being prepared is at least knowing what I'm going to be doing. What's the next step? So a lot of the people that do really well in the interview process are people that have asked a lot of questions prior to and leading up to the interview, so they have an idea of what to expect. Also, the main thing I would say is that you need to do some research and figure out what trade is right for you, because we don't let you get into the apprenticeship program and then say, oh yeah, after 2 years, no, I want to switch from pipe fitter to plumber. I mean, it has happened. It does happen every once in a while, but it's not widely, it doesn't happen very often. Let's put it that way. When you start in the apprenticeship, we expect you to choose which apprenticeship, which program you want to start within the apprenticeship, and you're going to start that and you're going to go through to completion. So do your research and figure out, why is it that I want to be a plumber? Maybe I want to do HVAC. Maybe I want to be a steam fitter. Maybe I want to weld a lot, and that's more aligned with the steam fitter route. So we always encourage everybody, please do your research, because you're going to be checking a box on your application of which trade you want to do. And if you don't know what it is, then go do your research. One of the big, most helpful things we have is you go to our national website, ua.org, and we have 50+ YouTube videos, and a lot of them explain apprenticeship and what the different trades are. So we encourage people to do that. We also have a lot of brochures. We have a lot of information here. When we're back open for application, we'll be able to handle that stuff out. And then we're happy to answer questions, on all of it. I've fielded, I don't know how many phone calls explaining all of this many times. So definitely.
What we've done in the past is we have had a video that we created, so the students do have an opportunity to take a look at that video that was between our school and the location where your training is in Lacey. So students could reach that. I'm really glad you brought up the UA website because of all the different YouTube videos. Do your research. And then hopefully as we start back into school next year and we're able to start making visits, we'll come back and do some site visits and have students be able to come into the facility when all of that's allowed and be able to see that firsthand and what kinds of training facility and work that looks like to help give them a better sense of the job.
Definitely. And, anyone that's interested, doors are open normally, and we would be happy to have anyone come through and we'll show you the facility. We'll show you different classrooms. We'll go over anything. And it's so much easier to do that than me trying to go all over the state and try to make sure I reach everyone. So if you have the ability, we have a facility in Lacey. We have a facility in Longview. So if you're in Centralia, Chehalis, you're kind of in between, you can go to either one of our facilities and check them out. Also, our website is gwwpt.org. That stands for Greater Western Washington Pipe Trades. And you can go on there and we have a lot of information there as well. So you can even email us through the site. Like I said, we're working on getting the application to be completely digital as well. So trying to make it as easy as possible for everyone.
Well, awesome. So I think you've given everybody some good tips to maybe start thinking about, classes to maybe consider, and maybe some activities that they should get involved in, whether it be teamwork kinds of things or just ways to build their skills and problem solve. So I appreciate all your advice, and we look forward to doing some more things with your organization.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on, Terry. It was a lot of fun.
Okay. Have a great day.
You too.